Hello, here you've reached Scott Batcheldor at the Underground Social Network for Nbcm News Live Talk Radio. All right, with my host, co-host Marty Bullrock.
Evening.
And we got a special guest, Andrew Brown, today.
Good evening.
All right, so from what I understand, is Andrew Brown is a close follower of the Yellow Vest movement, so we invited him on. He also has a group on the Underground saying, we said no, and I'd like to get more detail with that, as well as the du jour government movement thing. And so those are the three main things we want to work on, and then if we have time, we'll open it up kind of thing. So, Marty, you said you had some questions?
Yes. All right. Evening, gentlemen. I am Marty, also known as Bullrock from Long Live Radio and Canon.com. Yes, I have a few questions about this du jour thing, because my understanding of the Yellow Vests is that they're big upon this one thing, and it's an acronym called the RIC, and that means Referendum Initiated by the Citizens. And it sounds an awful lot like what I've briefly read about this whole du jour movement here. So, Andrew, can you please explain to me, like, what the du jour movement is exactly for us?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, first of all, that I'm not an expert on this movement. I just came across this information in the last couple of weeks. The actual best person to talk to about du jour would be someone called Doug Force. He's on YouTube. He's trying to make a documentary that will tell us all about, explain the whole situation perfectly for every Canadian. But as I understand it, in 1931, Canada, or Canadians, were told that Canada confederated. And apparently the documents that I've read have, and the transcripts, which are available online, I can send anybody the link that wants them. The transcripts clearly show that they didn't confederate, they actually incorporated Government of Canada Incorporated. And because they incorporated it, the Charter of Rights, as I understand it, and I may be misunderstanding it, but basically the Charter of Rights, because we're a corporation, only applies to the employees of that corporation. Therefore, every citizen in Canada can have their Charter of Rights and freedoms suspended at any time at their discretion and without good reason. And it only applies to government employees, basically, are the only ones actually covered under the Charter. But they've been telling Canadians all this time that we did confederate, and it's an outright lie. We didn't confederate, we incorporated. And so how it worked out was, I don't understand all the specifics of it perfectly, but basically what we have now is a de facto government, which is to say an unlawful or illegitimate government. And it's so they're doing whatever they want to do, which, as we can see now in Canada, we can see they're doing whatever they want to.
Yeah, just turn the news on.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have a constitution. We have no constitutional rights. We have a charter, a flimsy little charter, which, if you look at it closely, the very first sentence clearly indicates that it can be suspended at any time at the discretion of government.
Well, we haven't had we've never had a real government. We've had a dictatorship.
Yes.
And the unelected dictatorship, that's even the worst part. We can't even vote in our leaders.
No. I mean, I've been listening to some of the things that have been gone on about the myth that is Canada and all this, and it sounds like this Doug Force is going to be actually repeating history, because I honestly believe that. I think it was after World War II, but I'm not too sure. Someone was tracking this as well, and they did release, it wasn't a video, obviously, because there's no internet, but I think a book or maybe a couple articles were released, and it did outline exactly what you said verbatim, almost, from Doug Force, about how we aren't really a nation. We're just like a pretend nation on paper.
Yeah.
And how we don't really have any rights, and our leaders have never really been Canadian or for Canada. And it sounds like something I'm probably going to take up on this as well. And I have a few other questions as well, too. They're concerning what your opinion would be with these protests that we have. Like, what have you been What do you think about these yellow vest protests with their referendum initiated by the citizens, and how that would compare to du jour de facto?
The du jour movement first.
Well, I was just about to ask that. How does Rick compare to the du jour de facto movement?
Well, to be honest with you, I wasn't even. I had seen underneath a couple of the videos an acronym for Rick, but I had no idea what it meant or what the concept was. This is the first I've actually known what it was, so I can't compare the two. But basically, we don't have a constitution, so they're able to do. Oh, I'm getting nervous. They're able to do all of this, but the fact is that we are sovereign. We are sovereign. We are not. We don't have to follow their laws. Yeah. They have no jurisdiction over us. We are sovereign. But since 1931, they have convinced every successive generation, more and more so with every generation, that they are the legitimate government, but they are not, because they were not elected by the people, as Scott was saying.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing that my only worry is with the way I've been understanding the de jure government is they're essentially wanting to create their own form of government and get everyone behind them, and then just walking in through Parliament pretty much is the idea, because they're wanting to say that they're legitimate, but they're no more legitimate than the people that are currently in there. But the people currently in there have military, police, they have people with guns. And I'm not saying, be afraid of that, but at the same time, we need to recognize that they still hold us at gunpoint. And until we can get that away from them, we cannot change the government, right? We either through legitimate means, and by legitimate, I mean do the same process they do, start a political party and get it through so you can change that way, because anything else is illegitimate, and they'll send their troops over and knock on your doors, pull everyone out. It'll be like a Korean War, pretty much, so to speak. They'll pull you out of your house.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
It'll get bad pretty quickly if they feel threatened, and I know they will.
I don't honestly don't think that anybody will be talking kinetic rebellion in Canada. Like, I don't see this being a William Lloyd Mackenzie thing, as funny as that would be to see in the 21st century. But I honestly expect that there is maybe some common ground, that the yellow vests, these yellow jackets, and all of us can come underneath. You know what I mean? And like I said last week, I'm one of the founding members of the PPC Party of Canada, People's Party of Canada. Yep. And we all are gathering together, like you and I, Scott. We're of differing parties and differing organizations, but we have the same message largely. And I think that's more important than any association we have. And it was Aldous Huxley that said that these institutions we have are benign. They can be used for whatever purpose. It is the people who are using them which we have to beware of. He said that in a Mark Wallace interview back in '58. And I honestly hold true to that, and I believe it's true. A police agency isn't evil for the orders that they are given.
Well, see, the freedom of charter and rights that Trudeau Sr. did back in the 70s, I think it was 84 or something, he went to the Queen because he understood the same thing we understand. But when the Queen signed that, she legitimized it, even though we didn't have a choice on it. So therefore, it kind of gives it some legitimacy. Like, the only way you could have another government solely take over is if you get all the people and you have the Queen and the Pope's blessing, pretty much.
Well, the thing is that's how we do it legally. Like, if we're to form a political party, but I honestly expect that. I expect to see the true intention of the Crown and all this if they fail to rig an election and they end up losing their shiny ponies or their establishment cronies, they're going to start throwing every legal loophole that they can to delegitimize the government. So I am honestly kind of having it in the back of my mind to fail. And that's why I look at these movements such as the Yellow Vests Rick movement and this du jour movement, at least ideologically and philosophically, as the same thing. They want to take a phony government and replace it with a real government. And if you go back to Preston Manning with the Reform Party, I believe this sentiment was in the initial Reform Party as well. And this is another reason why I think that the myth that is Canada was out before this Doug Force came out, is because Preston Manning had to have been influenced by something. It wasn't just all, disillusionment with Pierre Elliott Trudeau, I don't think. I think there was something underneath the Reform Party that is being resurrected. And I think it's a good thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
As far as the referendum initiated by the citizens, I've thought a lot about how the de jure to work based on how the documents that I read. And the conclusion I came away with was that that's what would have to happen as the very first step, is we would have to have a nationwide referendum. And if the numbers bore out our cause out, then we would move on to the next step. So I don't think it's actually separate from the de jure idea. I think you're right. They're just different parties talking about the same thing in different ways.
Well, I think the biggest thing to change Canada.
Scott, what do you think of that?
Sorry? Okay.
Oh, I just said go ahead. I was going to ask you.
What I was going to say was the biggest thing that I know that we need as a country is we need to be able to actually elect our leader, so we have an elected dictatorship instead of an unelected dictatorship. And then if we can vote on laws, I mean, it's easy enough to do. I mean, as far as I consider it an insult that they treat us like we're kids, that we cannot make that judgment to vote on laws, or at least that they use that excuse. I've heard that excuse a lot when I was in school, because I'm like, well, why can't we vote for laws, right? Oh, well, because the average population is too stupid, my teacher told me.
Yeah, that's that intellectual ableism you'll get from academia. You get that a lot from these neo-Marxist left-leaning professors in the humanities and the social studies. You also get it from the right. Like you've got the David Frums in there just as much as you have all these nitwit leftist people. They're just they love that. They do two things. They'll establish authority, and then they'll appeal to that same authority they just established, and that's how they win these arguments.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Like Frank Vaughn actually released a video. If anybody knows who Frank Vaughn is, he doesn't know who he is. He's another YouTuber who generates independent commentary, and he said today that it's not about the evidence or the nuance behind it. It's always about the conclusion and repeating the same conclusion over and over again as if you were Goebbels. That's what they're doing.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's a
the CCP program that we have here. We went to almost every government leader, and conservatives' excuse was, oh, well, because we don't have anyone, because we're not in power, we can't do anything. I said, that's bullshit, because you guys could all get out there, do barbecues, even show that you're showing support. That would make a huge difference. But no, they didn't want to even acknowledge that there was homeless, let alone a problem, or even how to fix it.
That one bothers me a bit, because that goes back to, like I said, that goes back to my childhood. We talked about this last week about how we have this ongoing poverty and mental health problem in Canada. Yeah. And over the last 30 or 40 years, it has not gotten better ever since we got all these pie in the sky promises about abolishing child poverty. And by year 2000, fucking Chrétien. Or actually, I don't even think that was Chrétien initially. I think he picked the ball up from somebody else.
Actually, it was the NDP lead, the last NDP leader before Jack Layton. I don't remember his name.
That might have been Ed Broadbent.
But he put through a bill, and even though they didn't even have close to a majority, they went and it went through with a landslide, because everyone, I mean, how can you not agree to want to try to end child poverty? Well, they failed pretty badly because they don't want to listen to the people. It can easily be done, not just child poverty, but everything. I mean, all across the board. If we can start eliminating poverty altogether by helping people get back on their feet with retraining programs, this goes a long ways to making a great future for Canadians. When more than half of your friggin' population sits where they can't find work or they're undereducated, guess what? You don't have taxes coming in. And that collapses the country very quickly.
No. Vladimir Putin and a Sikh human rights activist both said the same thing around the same time, and I think it's brilliant. A society which cannot protect its children has no future.
Absolutely.
Or Putin says it, a child that can't protect its children has no tomorrow. Yep. That's how he put it. And I fundamentally believe that, and that is our most sacred and our most valuable resource at the same time. I say that because I'm a fundamental believer in natural law. And in natural law, the meaning of life is defined by two things. You survive and you breed. And you pass the knowledge down to your kids is the third thing. That's just a passive thing you do. And any step in failing at these 3 steps is the cardinal betrayal of natural law to me. It's basically survival, for ability to reproduce, and you educate your children. Welfare, everything is in there. You know what I mean? And that's it. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a rat, if you're an ant, or if you're a human. If you can't take care of your young, you're done.
Well,
and
that
the way that you have
the whole CPS thing, you know, we talked a bit about it last week there, but Child Protective Services has become a business for kidnapping legally because they make a shit ton of money off of kidnapping kids, regardless of whether there's actually an issue or not.
Yep. Child poverty, child seizing, all of this is that betrayal of the natural law that the government should not be involved in, really. Like, get out of our bedroom, get out of my kid's room. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, like, I mean, it's good to keep kids away from abusive parents and negligent parents. But when you have them on record saying that they will go in and seize kids if their parents have been in a car accident or if they've lost a loved one in a traumatic, like a house fire or whatever, like Scott can attest to this as well. Like, Prairie CPS agencies will go in on the most frivolous excuses, as your grandmother stepping on a cigarette and screaming too loud in your ear, as grounds for seizure.
Well, my ex, we lost the kid, my first kid, because of the fact that she grew up in foster care. That was one of the main deals that got us the red strike. And then because my older son and the doctors wouldn't listen to us, that he had problems with the regular formula, but instead of them saying, that, oh yeah, just give them the lactose stuff, right? Which is a lot more expensive. No, because the doctors refused to listen. And, you know, she had that strike with just because of that. CPS got involved and took her son right out from underneath us very quickly in the first 2 months.
No, under normal circumstances, the best people who know their kids are their parents. And there should be some faith and respect passed along from the government to the citizens on those grounds. The fact that we don't see this anymore from these agencies, and they're important. There are child protection agencies, there are education systems, and there are media agencies. You know what I mean? We're literally failing at natural law. This is how far removed the West has come. And we're reaping the rewards. We're collapsing. You have China and Russia competing for satellite technology now. We've lost everything. Our innovation and social status, it's gone.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you go 45 minutes from living on the farm to the hospital because your son's sick, and they keep telling you, no, there's nothing wrong, and somehow that's our fault.
Yeah, you feel like a piece of shit afterwards, too, because you're going to drive back home 45 minutes and wait for it to get worse? Now you're 90 minutes out, right?
As far as CPS goes, there's a lot more to what they do than just kidnapping kids and trying to make a buck. There's also the fact that, like, I spent 11 years in youth care. I was adopted at 4, and then the adoption was annulled at 15. So let me tell you, after the adoption was annulled, I instantly became a really good customer for antidepressants. And I think it was, I can't remember if it was Stalin or Lenin who said, in regards to communism and making the switch back to communism, he said, give me 1 generation of their children, and that will be the end. We will implement communism. So it's been my belief all these years, based on my personal experience, that it's a multifaceted thing. It's not just about making money, selling kids here or there or whatever. It's so much more complex than that. Almost all of us, everybody I know, all of my friends who went through the youth center when I did, they're all on a lot of them have passed away from drug addiction issues. A few of them have cleaned up their act, but they're still on pharmaceuticals of all sorts. There's so much more to it, and fundamentally what it's really about is that by asserting jurisdiction over our kids, a superior jurisdiction over our children than we have, they have now made it possible for them to take all of our kids away. Like with the transgender thing, if you refuse to allow your child to choose their own gender, they'll come in and take your kids away.
Well, that's a nightmare scenario going on in the U.S. right now, actually. Like, if none of our listeners have been keeping track of U.S. politics, if you're up in Canada and you think what CFS does up here is bad, now, listen to this. If your child is in a transgender classroom and you have an issue, if your 6-year-old boy comes home and says, Daddy, I want to be a girl, and you live in the right state, in the right U.S., and if you're in the country in the U.S. and you live in the right state, you are now guilty of child abuse and neglect for enforcing that kid's born gender onto him against the will of what's being the perverted shit being taught in the classroom. Yeah. We haven't crossed that Rubicon yet up here in Canada. At least I fucking hope. Knock on wood. But down in the States, this has already happened to a couple of families. And I hope to God, I'm religious here for a moment. I hope to God there, Scott, that does not happen up here in Canada.
Well, that doesn't happen. So I also want to mention another thing. We got a Christian who's me. We got a guy who is sorry, we got a pagan who is Marty. Or sorry, I mean pagan, which is yeah, it's one of those days. We got a pagan and we got an atheist. So this is interesting. Marty's the atheist. Andrew is the pagan, and I am the Christian. So
actually, I'm pagan as well.
If we can get along, so can everyone else.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. Objective morality can exist between the three of us, but I'm also a pagan as well, Scott. Yeah, my apostasy journey started when I was in my teens and didn't end until I was well into my 30s. I'll give you a brief rundown. First, I was Catholic. I learned about the residential schools when I was in high school. Apostated then, went atheist, went briefly Luciferian Satanist, went back atheist, and then started rediscovering Celtic heritage, became pagan.
Awesome.
So now you're pagan. Okay. That's good to know. So 2 pagans and the Christian. That's interesting.
I've been window shopping for a while.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
No, this has been pretty good. No, the biggest thing for me, though, is what we need to do is set it up so that way they don't have control over the people for CPS. And what I wanted to say was a simple warning. If they don't have a warrant, an actual physical warrant to enter the property, it doesn't matter what piece of paper they have, they cannot legally enter the house, and the police cannot break down the door. So if those police do not have a warrant to enter your home that come with them, do not open that door. Keep it shut. And tell them that you do not can subscribe or whatever it's called to their bullshit, pretty much. You are not going to give in without an actual physical warrant. They cannot enter.
Yeah.
Because people don't realize that they assume that, because they have this paper that, they can just come in. And they give you that impression, but they don't. Legally, they cannot enter your property without having a legitimate warrant or a reasonable doubt. So, like, say my kid, was screaming in the background. They thought I was hurting my kid. Absolutely. They can bust down the door and come in. But if I'm not, then they can't do shit. And always live stream it on something, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, right? And let them know, hey, guys, I'm live streaming the whole 9 yards, because I'll scare them more than anything. And they'll come back, but at least you have a better fighting chance.
Well, yeah, not just that. With one word of caution on that, I want to say is don't take the hostile route right away. I mean, this is a mistake I made. I have reasons for it in light of some of the things I've been seeing happening to other peers and veteran colleagues of mine with their families, but it is still a mistake nonetheless. Don't take the hostile route initially. Be polite and practice a form of escalation, you know? If they get pushy, you get pushy. If they back off, you back off. Don't give them any ammo at all. I mean, we're talking seriously here because we've all been touched by CFS and CPS's ableism, and they will use any trick in the book to justify themselves, to vindicate themselves, and they'll attack your character and even your sanity. You have to really watch your step with these people, because if they mark you, you're done. They will get your kids. Just don't. See,
usually they'll come in with an excuse to say something other. And yes, by all means, work with them on that. But if they show up with police officers at your door, do not open unless they have a legitimate warrant. But during these meetings, record them. But you have to let them know, or at least put a sign out on the front door saying, this premises is being recorded for legal purposes. So even if you don't say anything, if it's right on your front door, that's more than enough. And this way, if you go in front of a judge and they say, oh, well, they said this is this, you can say, Your Honor, I have it right here. It's all recorded. And it kind of gets them hooked because they will lie. They've been taught to lie. That's how it is, and it's very messed up. So, but let's get back on topic here.
Yeah, but we have I understand that. But on a last point there, I know that there's some issues with some of the ombudsman's offices and the justices of the peace. But yes, let's go on.
Okay, so Andrew, you've been watching the Yellow Vest movement, right?
Yes, I have.
All right, so tell us exactly what the Yellow Vest movement, because we learned what the Yellow Jack movement kind of was last week, and now, unfortunately, what's his name? Rudy Bruce moved on to the de jure government instead of being with the Republics. So,
well, basically, it seemed everybody will have their own version of what the Yellow Vest movement stands for. But basically, what I've gathered, and it's the same problem that I'm having as a Canadian here in Canada now, is that we're tired of government abusing their authority and in a fashion that is injurious to the citizens they claim to serve. And the people have been pushed. I feel like we're being pushed. We're almost backed right into a corner right now. And that's why we're seeing the level of desperation that we're seeing in France, where people are getting their hands blown off. I don't know how many eyes have been lost because of these rubber bullets. The police are acting like monsters against the people who pay their salaries. And these people are just hungry, honest, hardworking people who want to pay their bills, have a little bit of fun, and live peacefully. But the government is backing us all into such an awful corner where we have no choice left but to fight back.
Well, that's exactly it. I've been watching these videos of these protests in France, and I know a thing or two about crowd control operations as a veteran. And I can tell you right now that those rubber bullets in the eyes repeatedly, cops are doing that on purpose. Those aren't accidents.
I suspect too, yeah.
You know, because they always see the serious injuries always happen to be in the facial area or the eye. Those assholes are aiming right for the face. They're taking a non-lethal weapon and using it in a lethal fashion. They know they're breaking their own laws. And not only that, I noticed them, they're randomly batoning civilians on the streets, and you can't even tell whether they're protesters or not. I mean, like, some of these videos I've seen are shocking. It clearly Macron and his cronies are abusing their power. And it only feeds the momentum for a violent revolt. You know what I mean? I find this concerning because I just said it too, you know, like our legitimate ways are being stifled all too successfully. You know, every movement starting from the EDL, all through Pegida, all through Identitaire Europa, and now these Yellow Jackets, you know, even they're getting sabotaged. You can't even, like, any right-wing group can't even organize in Canada or the US anymore without Antifa being backed by the state somehow, getting in there and counter-protesting. And then they just shut it down because they know it's going to get violent. They don't go after Antifa, but they'll just go after them if they threaten to show up. Universities aren't safe either.
I don't know if you remember the Stanley Cup riots in Vancouver in, I can't remember, was that 2010?
That sounds about right. Whenever
there was a group that called the Black Bloc that was very popular. I believe that they kind of morphed into Antifa at some point. I think those were the original, maybe the prototype for Antifa. There were a lot of people participating in that riot, but a lot of the people who were there, some of them got footage of people who were not part of the civilians or the citizenry. They were all in black, and one of the footage showed that one of the people in black with the mask and the black hoodies had one of the undercover plaque, their badge, hanging off his belt. Mm-hmm. And as he was, I think they were flipping over a cop car, and as he was doing that, his sweatshirt lifted up, and you could see his badge, and somebody was lucky enough to get it on footage. And then rumors began to say, there was even a couple of articles about it, about how it was suspected by many people that the Vancouver Police Department was involved in turning a peaceful protest, or, you know, some unhappy citizens because their team lost, into a violent what became quite a fiasco.
Well, honestly, there's been more after 2010 as well. Of that,
they have the support of the police, right? Because they
Yeah.
are.
that would make a lot of sense, especially with some of the support. Like you look at Portland, Oregon, you know, something's really, the police have to be involved. The judiciary has to be involved. If you have Antifa allowed to just go onto the streets, throw shit at cars and block traffic for no reason, there's something going on there. And there's been rumors here and there. I believe, I don't know if it was Faith Goldie's or people associated with her, but I think she was saying that it looked an awful lot like there were agitators in the crowd. And when they were exposed by the crowd, they quietly tried to shuffle in behind the police line.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, this honestly seems, Antifa seems like the whole white hooded racist groups. Pretty much, they sit there and pretend to be, oh yeah, we're just a club, like the Ku Klux Klans is what I'm referring to.
Yes.
What it almost seems like they pretend like everyone else is the enemy. So that way they can go out and do shit, but because it's people in power, they hide their faces. Because any average person isn't going to hide their face because they're not cowards.
That's right. And that's the thing. No one's going to form a secret society unless two things are going on. They're being persecuted or they intend to do malicious activity.
The only reason to keep it secret is because you're afraid of how that secret would be received if it were known by the public.
Yeah. And if you're in a country like Canada, where, according to our government, we don't suffer persecution. Well, the thing is, give them the benefit of the doubt for this particular exercise. We do. I know we all do. I have as well, personally. But at the same time, if you're not afraid of persecution, what would the only reason you would have to form a secret society in Canada be?
Because you're up to no good.
Exactly. So it should be a no-brainer for these agencies and the police and anybody observing the police to see that, okay, you're letting a group organize in secret, rally on Twitter, and perform, I don't know how many dozens or hundreds of violent protests since 2008. And you guys aren't clearly seeing that these guys are not up to no good, that this is just, they're venting, they're letting off steam. If you listen to Trevor Noah, I mean, how stupid do these people take us for?
That's what I keep asking myself. I hear some of the things they come out with, and I'm like, how stupid do you really think we are? Like some of the things that comes out of Trudeau's mouth, it's just like,
yeah.
I think what it is a premise of a private militia too, because as well, I mean, they're being funded by the left because it's not cheap just to go get masks all the time. And there are a lot of these people that are up there are being paid. And the only time the officers ever seem to arrest them, at least in the East, like in Toronto and stuff like that, is when they're attacking police officers. They are breaking the law by putting a mask over their face, which is against the law. And so, I mean, they could have just arrested them all, but they don't.
Well, I mean, let's go back to Faith Goldie for a second, and to the Roxham Road video, which I'm sure we've all seen umpteen times, and how our RCMP acted as bellhops carrying people's bags. I mean, they made the big show of putting up their hand and saying, "Hey, you're not allowed to cross here," and then they stick their hand out and offer to carry their bags. I mean, let's blow all the smoke off this for a second. How is that not aiding and abetting the illegal entry or human trafficking?
Human trafficking is it.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody else were doing it and the RCMP caught them, they would be charged with human trafficking most likely, or they would be let off maybe. But I mean, but let's look at that. If the RCMP are doing that, should we be surprised if the rest of our police forces are up to some skullduggerous acts as well?
Well, for $90,000 a year to $120,000 a year, they make pretty interesting bellhops.
Pretty damn expensive ones, I'll say that.
I mean, when I first saw that, watched that Faith Goldie video, I mean, I swear smoke was coming out of my ears. I couldn't believe they were doing that. I was like, you're publicly broadcasting to the entire world an act of treason? Are you kidding me?
It's not treason if we're not a country.
Well, yeah, there's that.
Yeah, they're just out in the wildlands. This is the unclaimed territories. Anything goes out here.
Well, the reality of it is that every province is sovereign and every citizen is sovereign. So it's not only the federal. I mean, it starts there, but the provincial governments. There's some people in there that are in on this too, and they're at the municipal, because all of this stuff, all the things that Agenda 30 or 21, whichever one is the current one. I think it's 2030. All of those things, they're all going to be implemented at the municipal level. And the reason why I believe they're backing us all into a corner, or trying very hard to, is because they want to criminalize us. They want to arrest us, and that will be the final step in the great white replacement. That's what I see. That's how it looks to me.
Well, see, the thing is, though, is that you're not going to eliminate your own people. Well, you're not going to eliminate your own people, but what they're doing is very, very smart. They have viruses that can wipe out specific races across this planet, and they've had that for a long time now. But you can't justify using it by your own people unless they're at the threat of the point of being slaughtered. So if they're at the point where all your people are being slaughtered, then miraculously they let this virus go and everyone's saved and they look like a freaking heroes, I guarantee you that's what's going to happen most likely. Then the leftover people they're left, they're going to end up being slaves.
Yep.
Well, that was part of the plan. I don't know what it was. I keep hearing about Agenda 2020 or whatever the hell that was.
It was supposed to be originally Agenda 21, but Trump put a dampener in that plan, so it became
Agenda 2030.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Scott. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, I'm done. Go ahead.
No, I think it was originally Agenda 21, but then people started catching on to what was going on. So they tried to pull a switcheroo, and so they changed the title of it and started calling it Agenda 2030 instead. But the bulk of the material contained in that document was virtually the same. There were no changes that I'm aware of. Just a switcheroo.
From what I understand, is they postponed it because of Trump getting in power. He's not one of their goons, and he has enough power at his tips to stop them. And so they want to now wait it out till after he's gone, and then they need to try to implement it again. But it all depends how much great stuff he does, because I say it's great, they're going to say damage, right? So,
yeah.
Well, if Q is to be believed, they're not. A lot of people are going to be going down, and from what I've been hearing, there's going to be a data dump in the next little while that is going to be what's the word? Mind-boggling. It's going to absolutely shock the entire globe. Everybody on this planet will be paying attention to this news story, because and apparently there's a number of political elites in Canada who are on that list.
Yep, I know that.
I don't think they've put a pause. I don't think they've put a pause on Agenda 2030. I think Trump definitely has thrown a wrench in their works as far as the U.S. goes. But from what I see going on in Canada right now, I'm very well acquainted with every element of that agenda.
And Mexico. Don't assume for a second that guy in Mexico isn't a puppet either.
Oh no, they all are. I think that's the thing, is I believe every one of them is in on it. Only Trump is the anomaly.
Yep.
So the time for getting the U.S. right now is on hold because they don't know what's going to happen with Trump.
Yep. Well, we're getting more anomalies coming. Like first it was Trump. Well, first it was Brexit. Then it was Trump.
Yeah.
And then we ended up with seeing gains in Belgium. They almost lost France, but they did lose Italy.
Yeah.
I think they are about to lose Norway. I'm not too sure on that. And now they just recently lost Brazil to Bolsonaro.
Yeah.
Well, they also
now, with any luck, they're going to lose Canada in 2019.
Yeah. Well, they lost the cabal, or lost the North Korea, which was one of their main bases.
Yeah.
As well as they also lost Saudi Arabia.
Yep. After King Salman abdicated, that was the end of that.
Yep. So, but that was one of the first ones. It It was Saudi Arabia that was pretty much one of the first ones to be switched over. Then it was North Korea, and then all these other ones you just don't hear about, but those are the biggest ones, right? I mean, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Trump goes from threatening to next thing you know, we're making peace.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is how it is. The way he played Kim Jong-un was great. You know, they need peace. Trump knew that Emperor Kim needed peace, and he did it. You know, he just all he knew is he had to threaten and threaten and threaten them. And after China started distancing themselves from Kim for a bit there, that was it. They capitulated and they agreed to talks.
Well,
and that's how you have to play some of these leaders.
Okay, sorry. According to the Q movement, that the cabal had pretty much hijacked the dynasty there.
Yes, yeah,
and that's why there were so many issues. And see, this is what makes me think is that the reason why nuclear bombs were never launched from missiles from country to country wasn't because of some treaty. It was because none of them actually had the range to be able to shoot from country to country. It was all just bluff, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say this is because the cabal were in charge of North Korea, and they're still trying to develop the technology to have a missile that can go right across the world. Now, the IBCM nukes supposedly can go across, but not one of them has ever been launched.
Yeah, you know that's ICBM. Yeah, got you there. Yep, I know what you mean by that. A lot of it is bluffing, because think about the scope of that. You have a country that invents nukes. Then you have a second one immediately after that invents nukes, that being America and that being Russia. And all of a sudden, warfare has changed. You're going to have these guys chest thumping and beating their chests with abilities that are fake and imagined and real. And they'll put them all together so you'll never know what's fake or imagined or real. And then it just goes into the Cold War propaganda.
Well, absolutely. That's like the moon landing. I wish they would have landed.
I was just going to bring up that point, yeah.
But unfortunately, see, the only reason I can say one thing more than anything, if the U.S. would have been on the moon, Russia would claim the other half, just so they could shoot it out on there. That's the thing I know for sure. If Russia would have claimed the other half of the friggin' moon, if the U.S. had claimed one side of it, or even the whole thing, just to have a bit of an argument over it. That I know for sure.
Well, the thing is, I also read somewhere that Russia was never really interested in the moon. Their interest in space was strictly strategic.
And I've according to Q, they actually did make it to the moon, but what they showed on TV was filmed on a California soundstage by Stanley Kubrick. But they actually later on they did that because they needed to get that bluff out to Russia, so Russia would think they were beat. They were determined to get to assert themselves as superior to Russia, and that was the way that they had determined they could do it. So they got that piece of footage shot. They did all the publicity, got it done, but apparently sometime after that, they actually did go to the moon.
Well, yeah, possibly after, but the first one was fake. We know that. But see, the interesting part was though Trump called them on their bullshit. You know, with NASA. Oh, yes, let's go back to the moon. And these shuttles can make it to the friggin' moon. No problem. But the problem is getting past that outer barrier of radiation, because there's two barriers. There's the inner space and then the outer space. Mm-hmm. And the satellites all sit in between those two barriers. Mm-hmm. And the outer space one, if you don't have the right protection, and you'd almost need lead covered on the hull, it would weigh too much to be able to get past that, so you don't get hit by massive amounts of radiation or the whole 9 yards. So this is why scientifically, it just would almost be impossible for them to manually go there. This is why we haven't been to Mars. We haven't been to a lot of these different planets, is because the radiation would have killed people before they even got there.
Yeah, the heat. It's mainly, a lot of people say it's like thermonuclear radiation. It's just it's just the thermal radiation, the sunlight coming on. Like if you're in outer space and there's no atmosphere blocking the light, you will literally heat up to like hundreds of degrees of Celsius instantly, just from the sunlight.
Well, the only thing they know that will shield, shield radiation is lead, but that's heavy. I mean, you ever had an X-ray and they put that little blanket over top of you to cover you and shield your?
That's heavy. I know. I've been I've been X-rays with those.
Oh yeah.
You'd almost need to take up in loads and then build the ship up there to be able to actually take it out of the outer atmosphere. And even then, there's no guarantees that those astronauts are going to be saved. The slightest comet or anything that goes through the hull and everyone's dead. I mean, it's so dangerous, and it's not like you can call AAA for help, right? No, AAA for help.
No, something goes wrong up there. The whole mission's done. I know. Yeah, this is why we send robots everywhere.
Yeah, because of the radiation. Now, I wanted to address the sun thing, because I recently watched a documentary that came out with a very convincing but very, what I thought was a controversial opinion about the truth about the sun. Now, in this documentary, they claimed that there's no oxygen in space, right? So how could a ball of fire burn when fire requires oxygen in order to burn? And so what they were suggesting is that the sun, they suggested that in reality, if you could make it to the sun, right up next to it, you would not feel any heat at all. That they claim that it's a burning ball of plasma that gives off no heat, but gives off tons of radiation, which when it passes through our atmosphere becomes heat.
Interesting theory.
I don't know if that's true. I'm no scientist, but I thought, wow, okay, well, there's no oxygen in space, so that makes sense.
Well, I think astronauts have already debunked that just by measuring the radiation, just by measuring the temperature of the space station and the shuttle. I think they've already debunked that.
Okay.
It is plasma, but it is still a ball of fire too. It's a reaction between plasma and everything, and there is oxygen in space, just not like we have here. It's just a different form. We assume that just because it doesn't work here, the most common deal of life that goes on every planet is fire. Believe it or not, you see a lot of different pictures on different planets. There's some form of fire or storm or something like that. Or even, I mean, look at the sun, for example. Maybe it doesn't go off the same level of oxygen we do, but it does exist. I mean, if it would be almost impossible for Earth to be the only place in the galaxy for us to have oxygen.
No, it would be absolutely impossible. It's statistically impossible to say that we are the only one with a climate similar or very much like this one. I honestly think that there's a lot that we still don't understand, but the knowledge is out there as well. I mean, what we're talking about here shouldn't be happening in the 21st century either. I mean, this is stuff that our media and our education systems can be doing better in delivering knowledge and science to everybody and maintaining that knowledge. Because, you know, look at the economic environment we live in. We don't have time. Not everybody has the time we do to sit down and go through the news and go through the research, right? Yeah. Everybody else has got a job, 2 jobs, kids, a family. They don't have time to do this. So they're literally dependent on the mainstream media to get their 20 minutes of news they get, or their hour-long TV show before bedtime.
All right. So I want everyone to know our sponsor is the Underground Social Network. Come check it out. No BS rules. It's a lot like Facebook. So go to canard.com. Also, I'd ask that you please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share the heck out of it. Have some fun. We're going to be here every Thursday. And as we get more and more, we're going to come on more and more here. So we get a lot more followers. We're going to come to let the people know what we think. And I mean, we're going to have lots of more content and more people as our guests. We just keep getting lucky with getting guests here, which is nice. So I've done shows before, and getting people on is one of the hardest things we can do. So it's great. I love working with Marty even before, and we work on a lot of stuff. And I'm a Republic, and he's People's Party Canada guy. So the fact that we get along is great. But come for freedom of speech in the Underground Social Network. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share it with your friends. If you want the truth, be on here, and don't be late. Go ahead.
All right, guys. So, yep, the one last edition. No, last edition. Yet another edition of our weekly show. It is a bit tricky. It is a bit tricky getting guests, but we'll do what we can. You can also listen to Long Live Radio on TalkStream Live. You can listen on YouTube. Just look for Rhea Bowe's channel or her website. You can also continue to follow us on canon.com and NBCM News as well. Andrew, you got anything to say before we close this off?
Oh, no, we're not done yet. We still got like 15 minutes. I was just doing a commercial there. Oh, no, wait.
Oh, yeah, well, okay.
So, yeah,
I got 9 minutes here. I thought you were I thought you were closing her off. Sorry about that.
Well, I do want to talk quickly about the justice thing there that's happening in Ottawa. Even though it go a little longer, I think that would be awesome. Does anyone know much about what's currently going on there with Justin Trudeau and that justice minister who is Aboriginal who stepped down? If not, we'll end this video tonight and we'll come back with that next week.
Andrew, you want to go first?
Sure. From what I can tell, I mean, it reeks to me that he's just doing more of what he's been doing all along, except finally he did it to the wrong MP, and this one is not willing to toe the line. And so to me, that's exactly what it looks like. It looks like he is as guilty as sin of everything she's saying, but she's bound, which doesn't seem right to me, by this parliamentary privilege. So she's not allowed to tell anybody. So that's why she's already she's found and obtained a lawyer, a very high-profile lawyer who used to be a Supreme Court of Canada judge, and she's getting advice from that individual, that professional, on how she can proceed. But and when Trudeau came out and said, well, she didn't all that because he was trying to basically stifle down all of the drama that was being caused by this event. So he came out and said, well, the fact that she's still in the party shows that we're not guilty. We didn't do anything wrong. So, and the very next morning she quit the party. She resigned from the party. So that was to me, that was a very clear shot and message to every Canadian who's paying attention that, yes, I am bound by, I can't break the law here. I'm not going to go to jail. But yes, that was her way of telling every Canadian that, yes, he is doing this. It's not a lie. That was her message. That's how she sent the message. And that's what I've gathered from it. And I quite frankly, I think this will be the end of Trudeau. I don't think he's going to survive this scandal.
I hope so.
Well, I hope so too. I mean, we got so many people here. I mean, we got the fastest growing homeless rate across the country, and because this dipshit won't listen. I mean, out of all the screw ups, I gave him a chance. We went to Ottawa last spring and put up signs raising awareness for the homeless, and that asshole wouldn't even give us 5 minutes to even hear us out to do anything. And so that's what I'm talking about. You know, despite all the corruption, he could have at least tried to show that he cares about his people, but nope, didn't even give a shit. Go ahead, Bora.
Yeah, this is not a surprise to me with what's going on with Jody Wilson-Raybould, who's the minister in question, yep. Justin Trudeau, and the company's name escapes me right now. But it's typical. Lavalin?
SNC Lavalin, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And I understand that this is basically par for the course for the LPC cabinet. But I do have a marked amount of suspicion for anybody who sticks with, like, it's been since 2015, 2016. I'll give some benefit of the doubt there. I mean, how long do these liberal ministers need before they realize they're working with a combination of either globalists, thieves, or disturbingly enough, pedophiles? Benjamin Levin, like she should know who the cabinet's been associated with. Kathleen Wynne, Benjamin Levin. I don't want to let anybody in the LPC party, particularly the cabinet, get off with who they were associated with and why they are only acting now.
Well, the thing that disturbs me the most, Justin, you brought up the pedophilia thing, and he was fired from his teaching job because he was having inappropriate contact with students, male boys students. And the weirdest part is when someone started going and kicking up a storm about it, these 6 boys disappeared. Just gone.
Well, we all know the Trudeau Foundation had the boy love symbol on it, right? So and that when the indictments are unsealed, that's what it's going to be about. That when Trudeau's taken into custody for if all the stories I've read and I've documents I've read are accurate, that's what's going to happen, and that's why. I just posted yesterday, in fact, I found a link to Canadian Q content, and in there I found a direct quote from Justin Trudeau at some event with handicapped people, with people in wheelchairs. Pardon me, I shouldn't say.
I was going to say, is that just a regular cabinet meeting? Just kidding.
yeah, no doubt. Eh? But he was there, and there's a picture. There's a picture of Justin's in a wheelchair, and there's another fellow next to him in a wheelchair, and the fellow next to him has got his hand on the crotch of Justin Trudeau, and the quote by Justin Trudeau, and there's video footage of it also. He says, "If you don't allow another man to fondle your genitals, you're a homophobe." So there's a lot of skeletons in Justin's closet. So it was bound to come out. You can only, like my mom used to say, the truth always comes out eventually, and I think that's what's happening here. Now, I wanted to just, if I could, just add a little bit more to the Jody Wilson-Raybould. Now, there was, if I gave the impression that she was some noble whistleblower, that was not what I was.
No, that's your opinion. You're free to it. We're not going to tell you how you think. I just shared how I felt.
No. But there's more to it. That's why I should have included that in what I said.
Go right ahead.
Is that before she was demoted, had she have brought this all out and it had become front page news, and Justin Trudeau would have been impeached or removed from duty, she would have been the next one in line. So, as Marty was saying, this is not an act of nobility or some grand noble act that she's jumping on the cross for all Canadians. There's a lot more to this story than we know. And we have to keep in mind that this is the same woman, as Marty was saying, who almost as soon as she got in, tabled legislation to lessen the sentences for sexual crimes against children, possession of explosive materials. I mean, this is not a good woman.
I honestly have questions for the entire cabinet. Like, what is Mark Garneau doing? What is Ralph Goodale doing? Yeah. I have a thing.
Ralph Goodale's doing. He's busy trying to take away our guns. Yet it wasn't us who were doing anything. It was the criminals. And one of them was ex-ISIS member who went and shot up 2 kids in, I think it was Toronto or something. But either way, 2 girls died because of the fact that this returning ISIS fighter, who is a terrorist internationally, but yet for some reason, we'll rehabilitate them. Yeah, no, fuck off. Excuse me, language.
The guy's family, him and his brother were refining fentanyl into carfentanil, for fuck's sakes. Yeah. And the RCMP and Goodale are more concerned about guns I may own. Well, guys, I know we're not supposed to swear, but fuck you. I'm trained with my weapon, so fuck you. But anyways, that's it for me.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Now? All right, so come join us, the Underground Social Network. Subscribe to our channel. Enjoy our show weekly. That's between 6 and 7 on Thursday evenings with me, Scott Batcheldor, Marty Bullrock here, and whoever our guest is coming weekly. And the more subscribers, the more audience we have, the more shows we will bring you. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great day. And we'll talk. Let Marty go, and then Andrew Brown.
Okay, thanks for having
me. I said my closing piece. Just hold on a sec. And just again, believe half of what you hear, folks. And the individual is better than the group. We can go ahead, Andrew.
If you do come over to Canon, take a stop by the We Said No page and check out some of the research that I'm doing. And thank you both for having me. I really enjoyed this.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening tonight. We will see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, Saskatchewan. Have a great night, and God bless.